And welcome to JFall, and welcome to Jakarta EE 10 is coming your way. My name is Ivar Grimstad. I'm the Jakarta EE developer advocate at Eclipse Foundation. And here are some contact information if you want to reach out to me. Feel free to contact me on Twitter, LinkedIn, or GitHub if you have anything you wonder about during anything I talk in this talk or anything else. I'm involved in a bunch of open source organizations. I'm the Eclipse Foundation representative in the Java Community Process Executive Committee. I'm also actually a committer on Apache NetBeans, even though I haven't committed very much code lately, but I'm still there. I run a Java user group in Malmö in Sweden, and obviously I'm involved in a lot of things around Jakarta EE at Eclipse Foundation. Before I start talking about Jakarta EE 10, I want just to recap a little bit about what's in Jakarta EE 9. And Jakarta EE 9 was followed pretty quickly after with a 9.1 release. And this is the first time we actually did a dot release in Jakarta EE or Java EE. And the reason we did that was that when we released Jakarta EE 9, we wanted to get it out the door at the date we'd set, and we couldn't quite make the test suites, the TCKs, run on 11, so the vendors could certify their projects on 11. So that's why we released a 9.1 release, which allows vendors to certify on Java SE 11. So that's the only thing that is in 9.1 that wasn't in 9. And the three key areas of Jakarta EE 9 and 9.1 was, first of all, to lower the entry barriers. We wanted to make it easier for new implementations to enter the market, to become certified on Jakarta EE technologies. And we did that by removing some old technologies. So we kind of took away a little bit of the old SOAP stuff. It's still there, you can still use it, and implementation still ship with it, but it's not required and it's not tested in order to be certified, but it's still there. It's the 4 or 5 specifications that we removed them. We also wanted to establish Jakarta EE as a platform for innovation. So we've run through this process a couple of times now, so we kind of know how to do new specifications. We kind of verified it with the existing specifications, so we feel now that we are now have the foundation to start innovating new things. And there are a couple of new specifications coming, some of them in 10 and some in later versions of Jakarta EE. And among those, there is a proposal out there now out for community review for Jakarta gRPC. So that was something that will be included in the platform potentially in the future. We also wanted to make the migration easy from previous versions. And with the migration, obviously, I am talking about the namespace change. We switched from JavaX to Jakarta namespace. And I'll dig a little deeper into exactly what this actually means for you as a community and developers. And with easy migration is also that we wanted to limit the new functionality so you could sort of use the same packages and test your products after doing the namespace switch without introducing too much new things. That's why 9.1 isn't that much of a new things. So the namespace change then. The obvious question is, why should I care, and why, especially if you're not using Jakarta EE, or what if you're on the Spring stack or using something else? Why should you care about the namespace change? And one thing is that even though you're using Spring, you're probably exposed to a lot of Jakarta APIs anyway. And as of Spring 6 and Spring Boot 3, Spring will be based on Java 17 and Jakarta EE 9. So that means the namespace change is coming that way. And so if you're using bean validation or Jakarta persistence or anything like that, you're probably using these namespaces in your application code today. And also, a lot of the Spring APIs are actually using building on top of the Jakarta APIs. So they've already done this change. It's not 4 days ago as this screenshot, but it's 4 days ago when I took this screenshot, and that is a couple of weeks ago. But you get the gist. They've done it. It's committed into this framework, and it will come in Q4 2022. That's when you have to be ready for this. And if Spring Framework can do this commit and change everything from JavaX to Jakarta, then you can do it as well in your code. So as I mentioned, Spring Framework, what if you're just using Jetty or Tomcat or Hibernate? Well, all of these are now on the Jakarta namespace. So if you want to follow the latest versions of Jetty or Tomcat, you have to move your code to the Jakarta namespace, because they probably maintain some branch of Tomcat 9 on JavaX namespace, but if you want the new stuff on 10 and above, then it's Jakarta namespace you have to go to. So it kind of affects all the community. So that is something Jakarta 9 and 9.1 brought to us. So let's look a little bit beyond that. And that is Jakarta E10. And we have set a target release date of Q1 next year. And that is just a couple of months away. So it's fast approaching. So let's take a look at where we are with that and what's coming in 10. Currently, we are developing and producing milestones of the APIs and the implementations and everything, and all the projects involved are doing this. And we, as a platform project, we set the date from October 15. We're going to start expecting to have release reviews, because we have this. This is a visualization of the Jakarta EE specification process. It's kind of a regular development process, but we have these reviews scattered around there. And the release review is very important to capture all the IP in the specification, so it's perfectly open for everybody to use afterwards. And we want to start these release reviews of the various specifications around October 15, which is a couple of weeks ago, and up until around mid-December. And from mid-December and out until sometime in Q1, we want to kind of tie everything together, get the test suites running, find some compatible implementations to use to ratify the specification. And it's not necessarily going to be Glassfish. It could be some other implementation. It depends. There are no notion of reference implementation in Jakarta EE. We just have compatible implementation. And we need at least one to ratify the final specification. So any open source implementation of Jakarta EE can be the ratified product. So what's common in 10 then? All these blue are specifications that are updated. So you see it's more than half of them are getting updates in Jakarta E10. And those with a .0 behind the name, that are major updates, so potentially backwards incompatible changes. And those with the .1 release, they are doing minor updates since 9 and 9.1. And we're trying to use semantic versioning on the specification level. On the platform, it's more of a marketing number. It's going to be 10, 11, 12. We're not going to do semantic versioning on platform. But on the individual specification, we're trying to do that. Those in gray are not getting updates. They are good as they are, or the project team has decided that they can't make it this time. So they will probably work towards a later version of Jakarta EE. And there are some yellows down in the corner. And this slide is actually lying a little bit, because config here will not be a part of the platform. It will be a part of the deliveries, and I'll get to that in a couple of slides. But it's also marked with an asterisk, because it probably won't make it to the Q1 release of Jakarta EE10. CDI Lite is a new specification. And that is a subset of CDI. But I've added it here as a separate specification just to visualize it. So if we take the ones up on the side here, the more enterprisey specifications, and remove them from the picture, what we're left with then is the Jakarta E10 web profile. And as you see there, this is where most of the changes are. All the blue boxes, that's the same as in the full profile. And these are, the web profile has been with us since Java EE6. So it's a subset of the platform, and it allows more runtimes that are targeted to web applications, such as potentially Tomcat could be such a product if they wanted to implement everything. Apache Tommy is such a product. The others are more or less all of them implementing the platform. If we remove the specifications that are targeted to web applications, such as servlets, JSPs, faces, and this kind of stuff, we're left with a stack of specifications that are targeting headless applications or services or microservices, if you want. And that is a new profile we're introducing in 10, and that's the Jakarta EE Core Profile. And this core profile, I'll dig a little bit deeper into what we're doing here. And you can see one of the key elements of core profile is CDI Lite. So that's the important thing we're bringing into and making it possible with core profile. So let's look at core profile a little bit in detail. The core profile is targeting smaller runtimes. And with smaller runtimes, we're looking at Halidon, Quarkus, Micronaut, these kind of applications that are not a full application server, but there are frameworks for creating microservices. Now, I don't know if any of these will implement core profile. I'm just adding them here as potential candidates, that these should be kind of obvious products to one certified here. So these are potential core profile compatible implementations. Let's look at what the different specifications of core profile is planning to do. And start with Jakarta RESTful Web Services. And they have a minor update. They did plan for a major 4.0, but that will come later. So 3.1 will have updated APIs with kind of community requested features, but they will maintain the compatibility that they have today. And all specifications can be found under jakarta.ee/specification and then / the short name for the specification. So that's where you find all the information and can navigate the versions and how to get involved and that kind of stuff. In 3.1, Jakarta RESTful Web Services are introducing a Java SE Bootstrap API. So you can bootstrap your applications from your main method like this. And the application here I'm instantiating is the typical Jakarta REST application. So that could be the same application that you run in REST-DC or Jersey or whatever implementation you're using. But you can now do it from Java SE. They're also introducing multi-part form data support. So you can, from the REST endpoint, use the produces multi-part form data, and then return the parts as a list of entity parts. And these entity parts could have different media types or different whatever. It's pretty flexible. And this is a feature that has been around fairly long time in the various implementations, but here is a fully portable way of doing it, so you can move it from Jersey to REST-DC, for example. JSON processing. So JSON processing, previously it was the implementation of JSON processing and the API in itself were in the same GitHub repository, so they've spent some time splitting out the implementation, so it's a proper API jar and an implementation split out. They also want to provide some new features requested by the community. It's minor stuff, so you can check that out on the issue tracker of the JSON processing specification. And also the Eclipse Parson project is the implementation of or one of the implementations of JSON processing. So JSON Binding. JSON Binding will have a minor update providing community requested features. And as you see, the URL is specifications JSON B. And some of the stuff they are adding are things just to make life easier for the developer, such as deserialization of null, and some smaller deprecations here and there, and just making the serialization and deserialization easier for developers and more convenient. Jakarta Annotations are doing, actually they are, it's kind of requested by the community, but it's basically requested by CDI Lite. So there are stuff that CDI Lite needs that Annotations are making a release from, and that is to allow @priority being used anywhere in the code, and also adding @nullable and @not null. So it's something that CDI Lite needs in order to deliver. Interceptors and dependency injection are staying as they are, so we're not doing anything new there. Then it's CDI Lite 4.0, and CDI Lite is designed to work in more restricted environments. And what we mean by that is we want to make it possible for implementations to compile to native. So for example, using GraalVM to produce native images. And since CDI in nature is very dynamic, what's needed is to kind of take away the dynamic features. They're still there in CDI 4, so CDI Lite is just a subset of CDI. So in order to make this, they are redefining the portable extensions, pushing that to the full CDI, and introducing a new extensions API, so you can at compile time figure out how the extensions are being used of the application. And also a lot of other dynamic startup or runtime stuff that so it can be determined at build time. So you can compile to native if you want to. Also changing the beans XML behavior. If you have an empty bean XML today, that means discovery mode is all. Now it will be annotated, which is a good thing, I think. And also removal of some deprecated API parts. This has been deprecated for a while, so now it's been removed. That's why it's a major update as well. So let's look at config 1.0. And config 1.0 is providing portable configuration from environment-aware sources. And if you're familiar with microprofile config, you're probably going to be feeling very comfortable here, because Jakarta config will be sort of based on microprofile config. It's the same team doing this stuff. The committers on microprofile config and Jakarta config are very much overlapping. So it's been the thought is that when Jakarta config has been released, microprofile config will probably be retired, and microprofile will use Jakarta config. Most of the stuff will stay as it is in microprofile config, but they are planning to streamline it a little, make it more suitable for Jakarta EE. Maybe also make it more flexible by introducing tree structure in your properties, and kind of slimlining in it so it fits better with the Jakarta EE model. But you will recognize it from microprofile config. I won't go through all the updates of web profile, but I'll look at security 3.0. And Jakarta security has been around since Java EE 8. And now, there it was defined as a simple API for application developers to handle security in the applications. So you didn't need to do it outside of your application. You can configure it within the application. And in 3.0, the project is adding features and evolving the APIs to make life even more easier. And among the things that have been requested by many, and they're adding support for now, is OpenID Connect and OAuth 2. And also using authentication with client certifications and digest mechanisms. Also extend how the authentication mechanisms are used, so it's easier to configure different authentication mechanisms per URL. Have multiple authentication mechanisms in your application. For example, you have a JavaScript UI that are using one mechanism, and you have another API that some app is using that have another authentication mechanism, or you have a user chooses to log in with Google in some parts of the application and something else somewhere else. So it's more flexible, making it easier for developers and do it within the application. Other updates come in 10. We're sort of aligning to Java SE. And in Jakarta EE 10, or at least we're defining a strategy for how to align. So you remember from Jakarta EE 8, 9, and 9.1, the API source level and API binaries, they're compiled to Java 8. But the TCK there runs on 8 and 11. What we're doing with 10 is that we're raising the source level of the APIs to Java SE 11. That means that the API developers can use features up until Java SE 11. And also we're compiling the APIs to 11. But the TCK, we will make sure that it runs on Java SE 11 and 17. I don't think we will bother with the versions in between, but somebody will probably do it. But the TCK platform team will make sure it runs on 11 and 17. And that means that for us or you as app developers, you can use Java SE 17 features with Jakarta EE 10. And it just depends on whether the implementation you're using have been tested or verified to work with 17. Of course, you can just do it by testing yourself, but you're more secure if you're using a project that has been certified on 17. And there are already implementations out there certified on 9 using 17. And I'll show you in a demo here using 9.1 on Java SE 17 as well. So it's already working properly there. So why are we not going to raise the API source levels to 17? Well, first of all, 17 is fairly new. It's 2 months or less than 2 months old. And if we wanted to, and Jakarta EE is all about stability. And if we said, hey, go ahead, use 17 features in your APIs now, before we as a community has learned how to use them properly, then we will probably see some weird APIs out there. And that's a standard. And that will be along for a long, long time. So it's probably better for us as a standard to allow the community to play around with 17 for a while and figure out how to actually define the best practices for using it in APIs. And then on Jakarta EE 11, we can raise the API source level to 17. And that means for 11, I'm expecting to see proper record support, for example, in JSON and persistence and etc. Any questions so far? Yes, one question there.
Why is the profile chosen? Because we already have Eclipse profile.
Okay, so the question is why Core Profile? Well, the idea behind Core Profile, since we already have a microprofile, and the idea behind Core Profile is that the specifications in Core Profile are mapping more or less directly over to the Jakarta EE specifications that microprofile rely on. So by introducing the Core Profile, we can have microprofile implementations that are certified on Jakarta EE technologies. So it makes it easier for them to run that part of the TCK. To just say, we can run on Core Profile, and we have these microprofile APIs, so we're microprofile. So it's kind of aligning that in a better way. There won't be, there is no, I mean, a Core Profile certified project that only implements the core profile would probably not have very much use out there. But when you, in the future, microprofile can say, hey, we rely on core profile 1.x or 2. Whatever, and add these more microprofile APIs on top of it. So let's go in and look at a demo. And since I don't have any EE10 implementations ready yet, I'm using 9.1, but I'm also using 8. So what I'm going to do is to take an application running on Jakarta EE 8 and convert it with the namespace change and everything to a 9.1, and I'll even add some Java SE features there to see that we can run Glacier 6.2 on 17. And the application I'm using is a simple hello world application, and as any enterprise developer, I know that a simple application is not one single class, say in system out hello world. So I'm using a database where I have the message. I'm using Jakarta persistence to retrieve the message, and I have a Jakarta enterprise bean where I have my business logic, and a Jakarta REST endpoint that I'm producing JSON output serialized by Jakarta JSON Binding. And I'm also throwing in a CDI extension just to show that give the sysadmin some message when the application starts up. And there are several ways I can do this. So we can first go in and just quickly look at the code. So my application is a Jakarta EE 8, and I have my REST endpoint is saying on the hello, and I'm using the Jakarta enterprise bean to find my greeting, and this enterprise bean is using the repository to find all. Then I'm picking the first of these, and if there are none, I just hard code the greeting. So that's my business logic, and my persistence class is using the criteria language to just give me all messages in the database. So it's a fairly straightforward, simple application. I have my entity is defined having a message and an email field and a primary key. So that's all there is to it. The CDI extension is using the @Dukes annotation that I've annotated my greeting class with. And I'm just looking for this one when the server starts and prints this message in the log. So that's the entire application. And there are several ways I can go doing this. I can use transformation, and that is to do it on binary level. I can take the WAR file from my Jakarta EE 8 application and just transform it using one of these transformers, the Eclipse transformer or the Apache Tomcat migration tool, and transform the code. Just take the WAR file, transform it, the class files, and run it, and would be done. And this is a good thing to do if you're just testing out something, or if you have some binaries that you don't have access to the source code. So if you have some old application and just want to see if it runs online, then use a transformer and test it out. There are some things that won't work, like if you're using a lot of XML schemas, which I'll come to in the demo. That may not work with these transformers, but they're open sources just to contribute the fixes to them if there's something that doesn't work. I can, of course, also use my IDE to do this. And in the latest version of IntelliJ, you can migrate from Java EE or to Jakarta EE, and that is essentially you can migrate from Jakarta EE 8 to Jakarta EE 9 and above. So this is in the namespace migration done for you in one click, and I'll actually demo this one. If I wanted to do it manually, what I have to do is first to update the POM files with the new Jakarta EE version. Then I would need to fix the imports because it wouldn't compile anymore. Then there are some XML schema namespaces, properties, etc. And I'll go back to this slide during the demo and take it one step at a time. So the first thing I'll do, you can see I'm using the JavaX namespace here. So the first thing I'm going to do is to add the 9.1 dependency in my POM file. So I'm just going to copy the Jakarta EE 8 here and update the version number. This functionality requires to have both dependency in your POM file. I can remove it later, but when I run the transformation or the migration, I need to have both there. So here I have the migration. There are other options as well, but this is one I'm using. I'm just doing the complete Duke application, and I'm doing the migration. And do refactor. And here you can see it's all been migrated for me. So it's one click. You don't have to read the code or anything. You just fix it for you. So that's easy. So since we've done that, we can now remove the Jakarta EE 8 dependency, and we're now on 9. So that was update the EE version in the POM and fix the imports. So that's step 1 and 2 done. So let's also remember the XML namespaces. And in my application, I have one XML file, and that is my persistent XML. And the persistent XML here is using the old JCB namespace. So I will have to change this one to the Jakarta version of it. And what we've done is we've secured it by HTTPS, and we call it jakarta.ee. So it's to replace the jcb.org with Jakarta EE. And you have to also take the location of it and the actual file location. So it's fairly easy to do it. You just have to do it. And in all Java EE, it's always been a common practice to use the version in the file name. So you're sure you're using the correct one. And here you can see it actually already validates to say that, hey, this is actually version 3.0 of persistence. So now I have to do the namespace. And the other thing you maybe remember is that the properties that are prefixed with JavaX also needs to be changed. And here you can see, since I haven't the correct namespace, I actually get confliction in the IDE. So that's why it's a good idea to have namespaces there. This application would also work without the namespaces. So I could actually just delete the entire namespace definition, but then you don't get this code completion. So it's actually a good practice to have it there. So that is my properties. So what I've done now is to rename fix the namespaces, and also have renamed the properties prefix with JavaX. Then it's also step 5, bootstrapping files. And if you remember, I had a CDI extension, and a CDI extension is activated by a file called JavaX Enterprise Inject in the services folder in the meta folder. And it just contains a fully qualified class name to the extension. And this file needs to be renamed to Jakarta. The Tomcat migration tool actually does this for you as well. So if I had used the migration tool, it would have renamed the file and the properties for me. So what I've done now is to fix everything, rename the bootstrapping files, and then there's a last step, dynamic content. And in order to kind of look at that, let's run the application and see what happens. So I'll just deploy it here on ClashVis 6. There you go. So it should be, let's deploy it. There you go. I'm getting my new Mac on Monday, so then it will be faster demos. I'm looking forward to it. So here you can see we have hi there to the sysadmin in the log. So the CDI extension works. And let's blow this up a little and go to this is ClassFish 6.2. And the complete Duke hello. And you can see it says, how did Jakarta EE 8? Wait a minute. 8, we're on 9. And that's the dynamic thing. You could have, what if I concatenated some strings and did some reflection on it? So I concatenated JavaX dot and something else and did some magic with the reflection. Then my application would actually crash here. So remember the dynamic content. Here it's just text, but it could have been something I was using for reflection or some properties or something else. So I'll open the database here. If I open a query control, say and select from greeting and this. And you can see it says, how did Jakarta 8? So let's write, how did Jakarta 9.1 there and commit it to the database, and we should be good to go. So it says, how did Jakarta 9.1? I also promised you some Java 17 features. So if I go back here, and in order to not be forced to do this this database update again, I'll just change in my persistent file. You can see here's where I'm inserting the greetings. I'm doing a drop crate and insert these. And that is a good idea to do in demos. You wouldn't necessarily do it in production, but remember to, I'll just remove it here. So, oh, sorry. I'll just comment these out. There you go, like that. I don't know why I always push the command there and not the control, but so I comment out these, so it won't generate the new content in the database again. And then go and update the POM file to use 17. So what I'll do is just to comment out the 8 part, and since I'm using anything above 9, I can replace the compiler source and compiler target with just the release Maven Micronaut. There is one thing you also need to remember is that the Warprobe plugin has to be version 3.1 or something like there or above. So if you have an older version of the Warprobe plugin, it won't work with 17. So now I've updated it to 17. And let's go and add some stuff. And if you saw it in my resource here, I'm using the Duke's greeting, my database object, my entity object, and exposing it through the REST API. And that's usually a bad idea. So I want to use a record here. So let's go and create a record. Let's call it Duke's greeting record. Oh, sorry. There you go. And this one should have a string greeting and also add a date. So we can see when it's been added. So I have a Duke's greeting record with a string and a date. I'll return the Duke's greeting record here. And in the find greeting method, I also need to return the record. And when I've done the find first in the database, I have to map my entity objects to my new record, greeting record, and I use the entity get message, and I take local date now. And also the default has must also be a record. It can contain high, but the local date should be date of, and let's take 2021 9/14, the release date of 17. So now I've changed it. I'm using a record all the way up to the Duke's resource. So let's deploy this one and see if it works. I'll just hit redeploy here. And it's building. And while it's doing that, of course, I'm using the Eclipse Tamarind Java 17. Tamarind, anagram of runtime. Pretty cool. So now my application, do you think it will work? If I hit refresh here. What happened? It's empty. It returned something, but it's empty. Well, I'll tell you what happened. And that is, if I just look at the Dick's greeting record, you can see the method here is called greeting and date. And this is what we're talking about. The APIs doesn't support it on API level records yet, because JSONB is built around the Java Beans property. It has to have a getter and setter, or getter and setter. You know? But I can fix this with that. Of course, I could use create some kind of mapping, or I can remember the strategies for mapping serialization and stuff. But I can do a simple hack to make this work, and that is simply to just call this get greeting. So this is kind of a hack, but let's see if this works. And redeploy it. And it's done, and now it returns. So you can see, by just knowing how the APIs works, you can always fix it to work. So this is Glassfish 6 on Java 17. So yeah, it works. With 10, the products are actually going to be verified on 17. You can do it on 9. Wildfly is certified on 17. With Jakarta EE 9.1, and Glassfish also works. They haven't filed a certification request, but here's to prove that it actually works. So to sum up, Jakarta EE 9 lowered the entry barriers, and we see that by we're getting new implementations in very frequently. There are lots of Chinese companies adopting Jakarta EE and having their products on the Jakarta EE webpage. You can find it on the jakarta.ee/compatibility. I see the list there. It is a platform for innovation. You can see what they're doing with CDI Lite, with config, and gRPC coming in the door. And I'm pretty sure there will be more specifications coming as we go. And the migration to the JavaX namespace is fairly easy. If I can do it here on stage, you can do it at work. So the namespace migration is the major thing still in the industry. It's not only Jakarta EE, but 9 did bring this to the table, and we're kind of moving past that now, so just get used to seeing the Jakarta dot in your imports. Jakarta EE 10, lots of new changes, lots of new stuff, lots of cool stuff. With the core profile, you can potentially have Jakarta EE compatible products. So it's portable, so you can you have an application that potentially could be moved between the different implementation, and it can be compiled to native if the implementation chooses to support it. But this is kind of on spec level, enabling native compilation. You can find everything you need to know about Jakarta EE at jakarta.ee. It's very easy to remember, and from there you can find everything. It's /specifications if you want to see the different specifications. We have the jakartablogs.ee, which is a blog aggregator. So if you're blogging on any Jakarta EE related topics, you can easily add your blog here and get exposure. It will be moved eventually over to the jakarta.ee domain, but still it's on its own. I'm blogging on my blog. I do the weekly #Jakarta EE, and this is also displayed on Jakarta blogs. And the demo code for this application is on my GitHub. It's called Jakarta EE Duke, so you can find it on GitHub there. There is a step-by-step tutorial, so you can do the migration that I just did here, one step at a time. With that, I thank you very much for listening, and we have a couple of minutes for questions. Yes?
The question, what was the reason to include JSON binding in the core profile? Because what if it goes out of fashion like XML did? And if it was meant for small services, headless services, people tend to optimize further and use binary serialization like Ivar or Portable. Why
Yeah, so the question is why JSON-B or JSON binding in Core Profile, since most likely down the road there will be more efficient ways of having protocols. Well, we're not, JSON-B is, or JSON is the one thing that is used today. So this will cater the applications that are in this enterprise domain it's kind of the replacement of XML. That doesn't say that it won't be replaced by something else down the road. We've already shown that we have removed some XML parts. XML binding, it's actually not, it's an optional specification in Jakarta EE today. So JSON-B may go that road as well and be replaced by something more efficient. So it's kind of it's a starting point, but there is a kind of a new thinking within Jakarta EE that we don't have to keep everything forever anymore. Yes.
Okay. And I'm not afraid of this stigma. It's like every project or every platform that includes XML is probably some legacy, something outdated. I don't want to use that. What if 10 years later, everything that includes JSON will have similar stigma, like, oh,
Yeah.
something from the past, I'm not going to use that. And then you are producing a core profile, like a new spec that's meant for the next 15 years. And it's still susceptible to the same issue.
Yeah, so the question is that if JSON-B goes the same direction to being perceived as legacy as XML is today, well, things in this industry has some tendency to go full circle, and just look at the obsession we have about compiling to native now and generating things in compile time. A couple of years ago, that was what we did in Java EE. In J2EE, that was a lot of code generation. And then we kind of moved over to reflection and using dynamic stuff, so you do it at runtime. And now we're back again and doing it at compile time. So we're probably going around in a circle. And I don't see YAML being around forever. Probably not JSON either. And maybe XML will be revived. You never know. So yes, but it is a good question. Why include JSON-B in this? It could have been left outside and leave the protocol. But I think if you want to have something that is runnable, you need to have binding to something. So I guess it's just to say, okay, at least this, and later we can improve it. Anyone else? Thank you very much for listening, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.